Hello and welcome to the Meatball Podcast. Whether you're hitting record for the first time or whether you are an experienced drone pilot like our guest today, we're going to give you with all the tools, tactical tips, and advice to make sure you're ready the next time you hit record. If you're familiar with the Ryder Cup, we've got the guy who produced that whole piece and the FPV piece that went mega viral. I mean, that was such a cool piece. We've got Cody of Midwest Aerial with us today. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Love the show.
So what made you fall in love with drones?
Man, I fell in love with drones back in college. I was working. I didn't know what I wanted to do in college, so I was a entrepreneurship major, which is like, yeah, okay. I know I want to run my own business, but I had no idea what. And I was kind of, I knew I wanted to go to college too, but at that time I probably didn't feel like I needed to or really wanted to. So I just like general business but entrepreneurship, that's what I want to do. So I was in a class there, and I was on the market research team for a new company that was in the agricultural space, and they were using drones to map farmers' fields and find crop deficiencies in their crops and know, how they could better get higher yields off of their crops and stuff. So that kind of blew my mind back then, what drones could do and how we could use them in the future. And that's kind of where I started. And then that's when I picked up my first drone and started flying. I
want to touch on that a little bit. And I didn't think about that initially when I was putting questions together for this episode, but it's so true. Like, what are some of the things? We're all creatives, right? So we're coming at drones, flying from like, all right, we're going to put it in a video. It's going to be this. What are like the legit practical uses that people have for drones?
Well, that's the funny thing is because like everybody, when I tell someone I'm a drone pilot or I have a drone company or what, you take pictures and videos. It's like, yes, but that is like it's the first thing that everybody thinks of. And obviously still anybody can use them for that today, right? But I learn a new way to use them every single day. Honestly, it's wild. We obviously from an ag space, like we said, you can map fields, you can create volumetric stockpile measurements off of like a construction site. If they have a dirt pile, I can tell you how much dirt is in that pile or how much rock there is. We do cell tower inspections with them, telecom, all kinds of stuff, wind, solar, roof inspections with thermal. We went beaver hunting for a company to find and locate beavers that were clogging a dam that they couldn't find. So we went in and found them with thermal drones. So it's just wild. There's so many practical uses, and pretty much every industry can use them for a marketing purpose. But when you look at it as a grandish scheme, I mean, insurance companies are using them for claims and figuring out, roof damage or assessing a claim faster so they can get paid quicker and pay those out or accurately assess them. So, I'm still learning even today that there's just so many ways to use them.
I've been personally conned at home for some gutter checks using the drone. So
why not?
I know exactly.
Better than climbing on a ladder.
And it is crazy because, so many things. It is one of those things where like you have the tool and then you're like, oh, but life can be easier because of this and that and the other. So yeah, I just really like.
Well, I think you hit a good point. It's a tool, right? Just like anything else, like in your gimbals, your tripods, your lenses, your whatever it is, like it's a tool, right? It's like you're not using that tool for one specific thing. And we use different cameras and different lenses and different sensors on different drones. So it's really dependent on the application and the client and what they need to get out of it in order to make that tool what you produce the product that you need it to.
Yeah. So drones are, I'm going to say they're maybe just past infancy. I think we're kind of getting into those. So what were some of your first flights like?
I would say as an industry, we're still kind of tipping point of infancy stage as a market. But man, the first flights, I was flying a Phantom with the strapped in GoPro for the first ones. It was like we didn't have the ability to really move the camera as a gimbal. You didn't see the footage while you were shooting it. You just had to kind of
hit record before you sent it up and then hope it
was good stuff for the most part. But first couple flights were just kind of practicing, getting my skills down. I think in today's age, everybody plays video games or has or knows how to, operate a controller, right? Or a keyboard or has that idea of how you move through a game or how you experience that from a first-person view perspective. So picking it up is a lot easier these days to most people. So you get the controls down pretty rapidly, but it's how you use them. What settings are you dialed in? How are you using filters? How are you using different things to enhance that? But my first flights, man, I did not know what I was doing. I luckily, knock on wood, I don't see any wood around here, but I didn't crash one until like the first 5 years, and it was a battery defect. Battery exploded in the drone, and it popped out and went into the I was flying over water at the time. Actually freed up for it for like maybe 3 hours the next day because it has a GPS on it.
Yep.
I couldn't find it. It was like 15 feet down, free diving. But I had all of a sudden the crazy story. I'll just a little sidetrack on that. Please. But like it was 3 weeks later, all of a sudden I get a call from the police department, and this was up north, and they're like, "Hey, we have your drone." I was like,
so you're already back home at that point.
3 weeks, yeah. I was way gone. It was a July 4th thing, and he's like, "Yeah, we have your drone." I'm like, "How? This is in the lake." It's like, "Yeah, someone saw you diving for it, and they saw it go down the night before, and they had scuba gear." I was like, "Well, that would have been nice to know."
Yeah, he could have approached me when I was there.
He was watching me from his dock dive for 3 hours, but just awesome that they found it. And then you have to put your FAA registration on the top of it, so they gave it to the police department. They looked it up in the directory.
I put a little sticky note on. It's on this side, but
yeah, and it's like they found it, used it on the directory, and it still worked.
Oh my gosh!
I flew it. I didn't use it for any client work after that, but it worked. Like it fired up. I flew it around my property for a little bit. And I replaced the motherboard on it.
I suppose, if the battery exploded and popped off, there's no electricity being. There's some residual in the caps and stuff, but you're pretty much safe at that point.
Yeah, I was just shocked to turn on. It was in the water for a couple days,
right?
But
right.
Yeah, so it doesn't always go smooth in the beginning, but you're learning and trying and adapting.
I think I've only crashed once. Justin was there for that. That was a fun moment. It was like one of those moments where I'm like I was tracking somebody to the side, and I knew I had to like maneuver around a tree.
Yeah.
But like Justin was also shooting, and I'm like I'm avoiding like three people, and I'm like the tree.
Yeah, that'll get you.
Like I replaced the blades. It was fine, but I was like, knock on wood again. I really haven't had any catastrophic events happening.
Nice.
But
it happens.
Yeah, you mentioned ease of flying. I think like one of the biggest, maybe it's kind of a made up barrier. I play a lot of video games, so I'm like, yes, give me that controller. Right. I want to fly this thing. But a lot of people, that don't know drones are like, how the heck do you fly that thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What would you say to anybody out there who's maybe either apprehensive to get into drone flying because of that, or, to anybody out there who's like unaware, like what is the ease of use of flying?
I would say, first of all, start with one of those little toy drones, because honestly, those are harder to fly than anything that you're going to fly. Like they don't have GPS. They don't have position hold. They don't have anything that allows you to just kind of stall if you have something that goes wrong, right? Those things are, you let off the joysticks, it's like an FPV drone. You flops right to the ground, right? So they're super hard to fly, but it'll give you that touch and that feel of what's kind of going on, and then kind of pick up one of these guys that you have that you can get now for $300-$400 pretty easily, and they all have GPS on them. So if you launch and you just let it sit there, you take your hands off the controls, it's just going to hover. So you don't have a whole lot of risk in that, but I would say find an open field. Find somewhere with clear airspace so you're flying safe, that you can just kind of screw around and just fly and get the controls on it, because you can adjust everything on these things.
Oh, yeah.
Like gain, EXP of like how fast things move, and just really get it to your likings. Just like video games, right?
Yeah.
Like you can change if you want it inverted or you want it however.
I don't like every time the game's like, do you want to invert? Like every time I go back to play classic Halo, I'm like, why? No.
Why would I ever want that? I know some people that do, but I'm like, why?
Up is up, down is down.
Yeah.
Let's leave it there.
Why mess with it? Not my thing, but you can do it if you want.
Yep.
But you can kind of change everything and, just practice really. There's no risk in you going out into an open field and just kind of trying it out.
Yeah. How do you, on the learning topic, how do you kind of maybe then develop, all right, maybe I've flown a few times open field. How do you develop kind of some of those movements, some of those skills?
Yeah. Well, I mean, YouTube's great, right? As like with anything, you can kind of learn so many tips and tricks and setting changes that really will allow you to get those smooth cinematic, shots if that's what you're looking for. But I also think it's just, if you're familiar with a camera, if you're familiar with different movements, like it's a lot of the same stuff. It's just you're kind of controlling it and also having to look at obstacles and understand airspace. And the biggest thing too is like, you have a gimbal on almost all of the drones now where you can get really creative with it and, do kind of pans where you're tilting down and very smooth stuff around objects and reveal shots or top down. So that creative spin on it is awesome. That's why I think I really started, because I did start in the, cinematography drone world, right? Of like making videos and working more in the production setting with drones. So that's what I love for sure doing, and like passion projects like that stuff or golf stuff. But once you really just get the flow of just flying, then you can just get creative and test things out,
In that same vein, a lot of drones, I mean, arguably most people are going to have a DJI drone.
Yeah.
They have like master shots and things like that. When I first bought the drone and first got licensed, I purposely said, I'm never touching this.
Yeah.
I want to know how to do those same moves myself. Do you think that's a good place to start? Do you think people should kind of try to find a balance of that?
I'm like you. I never use them. Yeah. Literally never use them. But I do tell people that have never picked up a drone before, just go in there and then see them, run through all of them, and just look how it moves or look how it's doing something. And then how do I emulate that, right? If it is a subject 360, most likely you're going to want the gimbal stationary while you're moving around your object very smoothly. And in the bottom of, your controller, the screen really shows your path. Yeah. So you can kind of get a good idea of like, hey, is this an oval? Is this a triangle?
Can we make some perfect circles on the map?
What am I doing? Like I would always tell people, draw an image, like a figure 8 on your screen.
I never thought about that, but that's a great point.
Yeah. It's just a good way to
write out a word or something. Because I mean, I always love, like, you go on Strava, people like run words in maps. Like, I don't know why I've never thought to do that with the drone, especially like if you're just learning. It's a great thought.
A little practice, fun kind of thing. We did just kind of like a little seminar thing at a college the other week, and we did that with these middle schoolers in their STEM class. It was just, hey, draw us a box around the field, and then do it in reverse. And now can you do a figure 8? And it's just little simple things like that for people that have never picked up a drone. They get that concept pretty easily. So it's like, how do I do that? And go from there.
I like that. So moving on to the advent of, unfortunately, maybe my biggest gripe, and I'm sure yours as well. Why is it important for people to be certified?
Yeah. Well, one, you're flying legally, right? And in order to, in the United States, fly commercially and make money flying drones, you have to have your Part 107, right? It's almost too simple to get, in my mind. And that's fine, because we need, I think I saw something the other day, it's like next 3 years, we need 100,000 plus drone pilots in the United States. So like the opportunity is out there. Yeah. But just, it's like anything else. Like if you need a license to do something, just go out and do it. It's very easy to get. And I would say what's even more important, I mean, I shouldn't say more important, but that next step where I couple them right next to each other is learn the airspace. Learn how to just, there's so many apps on your phone today that you can log in, drop a point, put in an address, put in coordinates, and just see once what airspace you're in. That way you can know, like, hey, I'm flying safe, or I can only go up to 100 feet here because planes are ripping over the top of my head, or I know I need to get an authorization for this. And it's pretty simple to get those as well once you get that, those steps down. But those two things, I think, are the biggest thing to just flying, in compliance with the law. But it is important for safety. Like you're a computer in the sky pretty much. So like bird strikes, and if you're flying over people and something like that happens and you drop a drone, even of this caliber, on someone's head, it's not good. Like you're in some serious trouble. And there's been some instances now where the FAA has cracked down on some violators Finally they're doing it. There's plenty of drone police and trolls out there on the internet that will call you out if you put stuff on there. But at the end of the day, who cares, right? If you're flying legally and you have all the stuff in place, you're certified, you've done all of the things that you need to do to make sure that's a legal flight, then who cares about what they say, right? You're doing it right. So I would say just make sure you're following all those steps.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, because like even flying safe, we're both certified. Like I'm still like, if I can avoid a lot of things, I mean, Jess and I were shooting some work a couple months ago, and I shouldn't have done it, but I did the land on your hand.
Oh yeah,
and it
plenty of times.
Came a little far, right on the finger. That bled like you wouldn't believe. So it's like, you'd hate for that to be accidental on somebody, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like that for a little plastic blade, like I bled like I've never bled before. Like it is crazy.
I mean, they'll take your finger right out. I mean,
yeah.
There was a video. Is it Enrique Iglesias that it is?
Maybe.
Like he like grabs the Inspire. Like he's at a show and he like grabs it out of the air and it like falls and it just like immediately goes to his hand and sliced his hand like crazy. It's not great. We call that the water landing, by the way, because you can't land in water, so you gotta find a spot, but you gotta do it when you gotta do it. But
and I've done that a million times, but that one time, and I don't know if it was because it always kind of kicks back at you, and I don't know if it. Anyway.
Right. Wind draft or something just weird.
Yep.
Never know.
Yep. So you mentioned it's easy to get your Part 107. It's obviously very important. Obviously, Casey and I inspired a lot of people to just fly. And unfortunately, a lot of it was maybe unsafe. But, what are some resources out there for people that maybe do want to take that step and say, all right, I really want to fly this safe legally to get their Part 107?
Well, I mean, when Casey was doing it, it was like, it wasn't really.
There were no regulations.
It was a wild west.
Yeah,
it wasn't. I don't even think we had the Part 107 back then. So at that point, whatever. It was what it was. You were just flying. I mean, when I first started, there wasn't Part 107. There wasn't that in place. So there's plenty of educational courses out there online, YouTube as well. Obviously, there's plenty of stuff. I've actually a guest instructor with Drone Launch Academy as well, that they do some stuff with different courses and whatnot. But we have some of those resources on our website too, that anybody can go and grab a Part 107 course and just kind of figure out everything that you need to learn from airspace, because they do, it's obviously a lot of airspace. It's wind, it's actual just temperature variance. It's so much stuff that you wouldn't think of when you're flying a drone. A lot of aviation type stuff, that reading sectional charts. I think that's like anybody that I've found that has failed, that's what they failed on, right? Is the sectional chart reading, because it's tough. I mean, it is. If you don't know, there's a lot going on those maps. But it also walks you through kind of how to take it, how to register for the test, what do you need to do after, all that stuff. So I would say, YouTube, or find a course out there, and a lot of them give you guaranteed money back if you don't pass too on the first try, which is great.
Admittedly, I just went. The Northrops did a great 3-hour piece. There were a couple other people that I watched, and I was 10 hours of studying and passed with flying colors. So it is very easy
for sure
and very important. What are some of those things that maybe people don't know about flying drones? I mean, part of it is safety related. I think the only gripe that I have with the Part 107 is most of what you learn is above the airspace that you're flying.
Right. I know. I've heard that a lot. It is. There's a lot of that in there. That jargon is just, it's based off of aviation.
Yeah.
Like FAA was not, they're not a drone company.
No.
Right. Like they're aviation. Like they just are the association or whatnot that's put in place to regulate it. Yep. So that's kind of where I think they've continued to evolve and adopt it and change their ways on it. And there's new stuff coming out like remote ID. That's probably one of the biggest things that maybe a hobbyist or someone new into it that doesn't necessarily know a lot about it is, all the new drones will have remote ID built into them.
Yeah.
Which is basically like, a signal that the controller sends to like an ADS-B signal, like, how airplanes communicate with one another. Your drone controller and drone can now talk to like different either towers or airplanes and things like that, where we can all just be in coordinates of where we are so we can just fly safe. That's all it's coming down to, right? Because 5 years, maybe 10 years, we'll have Uber Air, we'll have people in the sky. Like, we will have drones in the sky carrying people. We're doing deliveries now with them. Obviously, Amazon, Walmart, a lot of these big companies have adopted deliveries with drones. So there's just more so the safety aspect of where we can fly and the different levels of it, and where that, you know, if you're in an urban area versus a city or suburban, wherever it is, just gotta kind of adopt that, I guess. But yeah.
For a lot of people out there that maybe are flying drones or getting a drone for the first time, what would you consider to be a part of, maybe like go through your personal steps, even if you could, of like, do I have a flight checklist? What are my safety precautions? Because my next step is to like binder it out. Because I saw this video of somebody that was like, I got approached by the policeman. I gave him my binder. Nice. Shove off for a minute while I land safely, and then we can talk. So do you have anything like that?
Yeah, I don't have like a binder set in place. I do have like a document, like a pre-flight checklist document, and always have my Part 107 on me and insurance and stuff like that. But, going back to safety, and, it's always important, right? But I think it's making sure, one, where you're flying, airspace, figuring that out. Do you need authorization or not? Then checking the drone. Like, I think that's what people just like miss most of the time, is like, that drone, for me, that battery exploded, probably was a bulging battery, and I probably didn't check it as well as I should, right? And probably shouldn't have used that battery. But there's plenty of times where I've had props that were chipped and I didn't know about it until I did my pre-flight checklist. Ultimately, that was like, yep, got to replace that one. And good thing I did, right?
Yeah.
Ran into a seagull the other day, downtown Milwaukee, came down with a feather on it.
Oh, jeez.
So I replaced that, a couple of those props as well. It's just like, you don't know if they're defected or not. So it's like, you might as well be safe.
There's surely nothing more nerve-wracking than when you're flying and you can see it, the birds kind of like matching your pace as you're flying. You're like,
Milwaukee sucks for seagulls too. Like, they are vicious down there.
They are.
So it's like, they're everywhere. But the little fun fact too is they'll only attack from above, from above. So like, they will come down at your drone. So if you can like somehow get above them, they're not coming up.
Okay.
So they're always coming from below to attack you below you. So get above them.
That's a good. I did not know that. That's a good piece of advice. So let's get into some of the fun stuff. Let's talk about the process of creating a drone piece. So you've been on the Ryder Cup. You've directed a lot of FPV pieces for some of the world's biggest names. What is it like? Take me through the process of planning a shoot like that. What does that all look like, top to bottom?
Yeah, for that one we brought in a team, and ultimately, we plan for day of. I mean, there's a lot of pre-production planning that goes into it, but before we even launched a drone, we were on site for like 6-ish hours before we even launched. So it was a lot of, for FPV, it's different, right? You have signal from the pilot to the actual drone. Those don't have GPS on them. So it's not like, those don't just hover and they'll fall to the ground, just like we talked about before with those little toy drones. So a lot of that is knowing your twists, your turns. Am I coming around this embankment? Am I going through this trellis? Am I going through this window? And kind of planning out that whole entire route. And then knowing signal-wise, are we going to be able to get through this flight and get enough signal throughout these long flights? Because a lot of times on those one takes, it's you're covering a lot of ground, right?
They got to be pretty centralized,
Yeah, for sure. If you look at the Ryder Cup one, the pilot was actually we go below like a walkway in the beginning. He was hiding in that walkway up top, which was kind of centrally located. Yeah. But there were some times when we got on the outer skirts of the clubhouse and stuff that, we were pushing close to, but we had solid signal strength where we felt confident. But some of the times, I've seen it too, and some of we haven't done a whole lot of them on this regard, but like they'll push the pilots like in like a rolly chair behind the drone so that they get solid signal if it's in a building with a lot of concrete
line of
or
sight
something
is
like
pretty
that.
Important.
Yeah, line of sight. Yeah, for sure. But Yeah, and then also figuring out who's not going to be in your shot.
Yeah.
That was a lot of ground with a lot of people around for that event. There was so many things going on that ultimately we had to have people staged throughout the course or the flight map there, where we had to let them know, like, hey, stay back. We can't get you in the shot. There is a spot in the video. I don't know if you've noticed, if you've watched it or not, but like there's a spot where we had to do some effects to blur some people out because they snuck through one of our gaps. And we only had 30 minutes with the trophy. So we had to just nail it. And ultimately, we that was the shot. The flight was perfect. Yep. So we had to be like, all right, looks like we got to do some editing and just edit them out.
Is a lot of it kind of doing it multiple times and then kind of just, all right, this was the best one. What's the least amount of error to fix?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes some of the flights when you're doing practice flights, those are the best ones, right? They're like, that was sick. We nailed that, but we didn't have the trophy at the end, or something like that. So it is a lot of on the fly type of stuff too. It's like the pilot either screwing around and finds something that's like, well, that path would be way sicker. You get that. There's so much into it that people don't think about. And I think you guys have talked about on one of your past podcasts that I listened to about the production, like everything's planned, right? Like you look at a video, 99% of it's intentional. And some of it is just in the moment, spur of the moment stuff where it's like, yeah, that's just looks really awesome. And let's just go with that.
How many pre-flight tests do you typically do in something like that for a one take?
The FPV stuff is all over the place. If it depends if it's a longer flight or if it's coordinated, if you have people actually doing action items and stuff. I've only really produced a lot of the FPV stuff. I'm not a professional FPV pilot. I don't have the time to fly like these guys do. Like some of these pilots are just awesome. They're so sick and do some really crazy stuff. So from a producing standpoint, though, it really does. One of the ones that we did, was through a Y and literally had like maps printed out of like floor plans ahead of time in our pre-production. Yeah, and we would draw our flights and make sure we hit all of our points inside of that building, and then kind of map out too. It was like, okay, when we get to racquetball, we're gonna have Bob, hitting a racquetball, and we're gonna go around Bob, and then we're gonna go to the swimming pool and then weights and then all this stuff. And then you kind of match that up as you get there and do that walkthrough and figure it out. But yeah, it's really dependent on the type of one take, whether there's audio, there's people, there's coordination, or it's just like a highlight kind of rip around. We did a lot of those too, where you just rip and put it together and just cut it and edit it afterwards. But
so how do you handle then audio? Because drones don't. Yeah. You don't want a microphone next to all the blades whirling. So how do you do that?
Just grab it afterwards. So like we'll go to each setting and just kind of snag the audio afterwards. And it's more of a, you don't want, like you said, want the buzzing of the drone in there. So grab it afterwards and kind of then match it up in post. Yeah. So then on those projects where you do have action, how are you directing the people? Do you all have headsets on? Are you on, do they have a phone on speaker in their pocket? Because you can get away with some of that if you're not capturing audio live. So yeah, for sure. I mean, I haven't directed as many FPV flights, honestly, as well other stuff. Like for our drone, most of our drone stuff that we do, like either inspections or cinematography or stuff, we actually have a drone trailer. So we have a monitor up top where we live feed the drone footage back into the monitor. So the client can be in the trailer and see what's going on. So that me as a director, or if I'm flying it, can validate to the client, like, yep, that's what we need right away. It's like a monitor on a set, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely. Video village.
Yeah, exactly. So we just have a trailer with it that can go anywhere. But from the directing side, it's a lot of trusting the pilot and the people having to trust you also, right? It's like flying a drone at people. It's like they get scared about it, right? So it's like, these are fine. These have, the propellers and housings and all that stuff. So I think it's just trust more than anything, that the pre-production and the planning and the safety and everything's taken care of. Are you typically the one calling the things out, or is the pilot kind of maybe, because
how many times are you like on the fly, got to make some quick adjustments? I'm a little bit behind my route.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both for sure. Like you're talking to both of them. Either we have a headset on, or we have the team that's ultimately in place to know the turn or the action. A company that I work with quite a bit, Indoor Drone Tours, good buddies of mine. Like they ultimately they'll have like someone behind the drone as well, like on speaker, loud, and like have headphones on and things like that, where ultimately they will call out these actions. It's like, hey, hit the shot now. Like, shoot this, shoot that hoop. Like, do this. If you watch the Y one, I was the one shooting hoops in the basketball court. So it's like you hear those shots come out and all that stuff too. So it's sometimes you direct and from behind it. Sometimes it's like you call in and you got to be an actor in some ways too, and or different things. So you got to be flexible. I think that's like anything, right?
Yeah. So you're talking about you came through college through the entrepreneurship course. Obviously, drone is for you your career. So talk to us a little bit about your business and how that kind of started and really what you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, so Midwest Aerial Productions, I started 2 years out of college. Was working for a sales company. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And ultimately, I just wanted to do something more passionate about. Yeah. And I actually quit to work at Whistling Straits, where the Ryder Cup was. Okay. I was a caddy there.
Nice.
And while I was caddying, I was starting up my business, but I was meeting people, asking them questions, because there you're meeting with, you're caddying for pretty powerful people.
Oh, yeah.
Most of them are CEOs or CFOs or CEOs, somewhere in higher and executive level. Ultimately, I'm just picking their brain while I'm on a golf course for 5 hours a day with them, where they're the most relaxed. And if I'm on a meeting with them, I'm getting 20, 30 minutes maybe, and they really don't, that's tough to get.
Yeah.
So I'm picking their brain on just any industries that they were in and figuring out, hey, how are drones going to be used? How are you thinking about them? Are you thinking about them? At that time, a lot of them are like, well, no, actually, we haven't really thought of that. So a lot of that was research just on my end, networking, figuring out how we're going to build a business around it. And then I started it just local, a lot of local stuff, man. Just like anything, just really just getting out there, flying, trying to get my name out there and network. And then it turned into something where we had clients from across the Midwest and beyond that they needed qualified licensed pilots that they knew they could get consistent, good quality data, right? Yeah. Or imagery. So as much as I love to travel, I didn't want to be driving and flying and doing all these things where I would rather have helped other pilots, help them get more income and revenue streams. And so we turned in more of a brokerage firm where we really helped clients get these pilots that were great for their specific job, right? And not everybody's a cinematographer with the drone or, has thermal capabilities or mapping experience. So we found the right pilot for their specific job, which gave them great experience. And then the pilots as well, just that consistency. And through that, kind of learned a lot about the industry and how, drone pilots they're not business. A lot of people they're not business people. Like they love flying drones or they're nerds like us and they want to like just nerd out and fly and do all that other stuff. And it's like, you know what? Why have not give them an ability to just manage everything on the back end? And that's where we kind of created our new company, Droneadair, which is a software platform now that allows these pilots to book jobs, get paid, schedule missions, manage their clients, and then also get tied into these enterprises for recurring revenue streams down the road.
I think that's great. And, one question that is so easy to ask is, how do I got a drone? Because, I mean, drones are kind of a cheaper barrier of entry to like kind of that creative entrepreneurial shit. Yeah. There is the data gathering and other ways to use drones, but like for a lot of people, I think especially now with the way drones are kind of pivoting toward the cinematography side more so than the utility side. How do people go about getting their first clients? Obviously Droneadair is a great resource for people that it is kind of an all-in-one stop. But I remember when I first was looking into getting a drone, even before starting at any company, I was like, do I hit up real estate agents? Right. Do I, how you obviously had a great, caddying for everybody to do that and do your own research. But how would you kind of suggest people maybe get started in some of those first clients?
What are you passionate about? I mean, ultimately, right? If you're gonna love doing something with drones or without, I always tell people like, where could you see yourself doing it every day, right? Mm-hmm. Are you happy waking up and going to a construction site every day? Like, are you with your people there? Are you fulfilled in that job, right? Are you gonna be able to then sell yourself into that market? Like, real estate is one that always people gravitate towards too, mm-hmm. right? Because there's a ton of realtors out there, and real estate is always going to be there. But it's not for everybody, right? So I think it really comes down to what are you good at? Like, are you good at editing? Are you good at actually flying? Are you good at mapping or any of that stuff? Find what you're good at, what you love, and then ultimately, are you going to be happy, and can you sell yourself into it and market it to that specific niche? But don't get me wrong, like, it was also like so for me to say, because I did not niche down. I didn't do that. I was like the complete opposite of finding a niche. But I do tell people, like, if that's what you want to get into now in today's market of where we are in the drone industry, you do need to find a niche to start. You're going to get other clients throughout that process of growing your business in different areas. And don't be afraid to take those jobs for sure. Right. But just to start, find that niche and get really good at it.
And drone cinematography, I'm going to kind of pivot selfishly into like storytelling.
Right, I love that spot.
It's unfortunately, I think a lot of times for us specifically, we're accidentally pigeonholed into like, oh, but like drone shots just get a quick establishing shot.
Yeah.
How do you combine a drone shot or drone shots? Like, how do you combine drone work as a whole into a complete story for whether it's only drone work or whether it's drone, complementing some actual cinematography work?
Yeah. I mean, it comes back down to like your pre-production too, right? I was like, what is the story are you trying to tell? Like, what kind of job is it? For like the FPV stuff for the Ryder Cup, like that was all drone. That was never going to be anything else. Like, we've done whole tours that they're just going to be drone stuff, right? Is it a specific action that you're just trying to get with that drone as an established? Because I think, as you see today in like productions, right, they are most of the time, they're the intro shot they're the outro shot. It's like, let's get us out of just that, because it's way more than that, right? Yeah. It's like, I also think it's so sick moving from scene to scene and establishing, yes, those shots, but also like, I'm sure you've seen some of these clips, but like now we can put like handles on drones and like move them through the shot, and you can start in from high up and bring it down, and now someone's grabbing the drone and like moving it into and we're turning the drone off when they grab it, and then they're like hand holding it. Yeah,
gimbal's still working.
Gimbal is still better than most gimbals. So it's like, we're gonna now do that and then walk through a whole scene, and then as that scene is like finishing up, now I'm also then turning that drone back on and taking off again and moving it from scene to scene. There's one that I can't remember where they did it, but they're in like a hotel room. That went super viral. Hotel room.
I feel like I know which one you're talking about. They grabbed it and then it like went straight down,
straight down the building, out the window, and like followed this car that was coming under this viaduct, and like then it's like next to the car and it turns and it goes into the car. That was like a FPV that they had, and then they grabbed it by like a handle and like was in the shot in the car with them. Action scene, and then boom, out the car again, and now we're to the next scene. So like those whole scenes can be done with drone. And it's a creative way to do it, and that captures people's attention. That's just one way, obviously, I think that people don't think about. They think, well, I'm not grabbing a drone, but there's pretty cool ways that you can do it.
Yeah, I think my biggest hurdle in that is typically you're going outdoor to indoor.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just being too picky, but like that moment where all of your settings kind of have to realign to being inside, it's just like, I hate that 2 seconds of like, you can see everything just falling apart for a second.
Just do a little speed ramp, right? Yeah. Fly through it.
Yeah. So what is your take on pre-built drones versus custom-built drones?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it depends on the situation, right? Like any DJI drone is obviously, unfortunately and fortunately, they're the market leaders, right?
Yeah.
So they're great, amazing, pre-built, quality drones that are going to work most of the time, right? And just get you really good stuff. If you're looking at the FPV side of things, they're not as well built, and the cameras aren't as great as what you strap in a GoPro 11 or 12. What are we on these days?
12?
I think we're 13? On 12. Yeah. You know, and you can get the 10-bit and 12 and all that stuff where you can really dial in your settings. But also you don't have the flexibility of like doing crazy flips and maneuvers and all this other stuff. And I believe if you're going to get into FPV, start with a smaller one, you know, try to build it yourself. And just kind of test it out and learn on a sim. A lot of people, you know, don't really know that those are out there. So learn on a simulator and just get the feel of it before you go out and fly and crash one.
I haven't flown an FPV yet, but I have run the simulators. It is very different.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're able to just do barrel rolls if you want. Like you can just do crazy things like 100, you know. You can do more than 100, but legally I think it's 100 that you have to stay under.
Yeah.
But there's like, you know, the racing drones is now on ESPN, and I think one of the guys that won it a couple of years ago, he's from Oshkosh actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
On the the drone racing league. Yeah. So it's like there's so many ways out there that you can kind of take those FPVs to a new level.
Those are so cool to watch because it's like, especially ones like that are inside of stadiums, and it's like, you know, how do you create a 3D space that is a checkpoint that everybody has to follow the, you know, like there's the planning in that alone has got to be crazy.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, I mean, you're ripping turns and doing flips and crazy things.
With other drones around you, no less. I mean,
some of the crashes are more fun to watch than anything else. They get pretty upset by it, but it's fun to watch. It's entertaining.
Yeah. So where do you see the future of drones? Whether that's the drone itself, the business side?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of beyond visual line of sight stuff happening, right? We're talking like long range flights where, you know, we either have multiple checkpoints of visual observers that are passing off that, or, well, that's not beyond visual line of sight, but that is one way that we can do it today.
That is part of the rule is you have to be within line of sight, so it is important to...
Correct, yeah. Beyond visual line of sight, we're looking at, obviously, the regulations fully being adapted and continuous happening now, but being able to fly a drone from sitting right here, that's in Texas or Colorado or somewhere else, that, you know, there's someone there sometimes by the drone, but drone in a box, if you've heard that term coined before, there's literally drones out there today that will sit in this box that they can land in it. It closes, it charges, it can dump the footage. It can do all of these things in once. It has a weather vane on it. You can set automated flights with it, all that stuff. So a lot of it is, I see deliveries being huge in the future. Yeah. That's a massive market. Surveying and mapping is one of the largest growing sectors in the drone space, where every piece of property needs to be mapped or surveyed or inspected or something along those lines. So I think I saw something like globally that's like a $500 billion market in like 10 years. So huge opportunity there. And, you know, the autonomous flights is something that is going to continuously improve and go forward as we get the regulations.
How do you see it playing out when it is something that, like, you know, because like I said, you know, right now the test is kind of, we're going to teach you the airspace that airplanes are flying in commercially, but there's really not a lot in that middle ground between, you know, us on the ground and those flights. So obviously deliveries are going to be a thing. Eventually, you know, everybody keeps saying, well, we're going to have flying cars, this and that. How do you regulate that?
I don't know. I'm not that person to tell. Yeah. I mean, I know enough to be dangerous, but I wouldn't be the one sitting in the regulations room. But you know, you have to just have buy-in from government agencies, you know, cities, state legislator, FAA, all of that we like need to work at it together, you know, to ultimately find a better way to segment, you know, that airspace and just be safe for everybody.
All right. I couldn't agree more, and I'm excited to see where the flights take us. Thank you so much for being on. Do you have any last words or any plugs you want to give?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, and obviously feel free to reach out. Anybody that wants to talk drones or business or anything. Yeah, Cody Retlich on Instagram or Midwest Serial or Droneadair.
And definitely check out Droneadair, everybody. It is a great resource for everybody who's looking to grow. I admittedly just happened yesterday, but I've been following it. You know, I've been watching as you've been building it, so I do understand kind of the process of it. But you know, it's especially for something like a side hustle thing.
Yeah.
You know, just to have that space where it's like, you know, I put a $1,000 into a drone and I can go do all these things, you know, grow my client base, and maybe it becomes your full time.
Yeah,
so.
that's our whole goal, is like get side hustlers, weekend warriors, the ability to like realize it's a full-time career. It's ability for you to do something fun and passionate and make it into a business, right? And then just get rid of all the boring stuff. Let us handle that, and you just get out and fly.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming out.
You bet. Thanks for having me.